Hi everyone, this is Dr. Fab Mancini, and here we are in CHIROTHON at MAC Fall Convention. Now, we've been here all morning with you. We started last night, and this is really a great opportunity for us to do kind of like a Jerry Lewis telethon for chiropractic. This is what the CHIROTHON is. We're raising funds not only from our chiropractic doctors, chiropractic assistants, patients, but even individuals that just want to support this holistic profession that we have been serving for over 128 years. And we need it because right now we have the majority of the people still not experiencing chiropractic. So we need to raise some funds because the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress has one mission: positive press for chiropractic, and that's what you're funding today. So first of all, I want to give you a new update. So that last segment was so powerful and so many people were touched by Leroy's story and how chiropractic actually benefited him that we raised up to $5,375. So first of all, thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate it. It doesn't matter. Remember what I said. We have the link for you right here. We can donate $10, $50, $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever you feel you can give. Just know that every single dollar will go towards positive press for chiropractic. So also remember that the top 2 donors are going to get this amazing backpack, and we're so grateful to you, but we want you to be the one taking that backpack home. So our next guest needs no introduction. I got to tell you, Dr. Janice Hughes is a legend in our profession. She has been a leader, an author, a speaker, a trainer to thousands of us out there. Most importantly, she's very passionate about autism. We know her work from that, but now the neurological disorders that are plaguing so many of our loved ones, and that's what she's now collected all these interdisciplinary doctors that really have one mission, and that is to show the world that this brain of ours is, we call it neuroplasticity, but it's a moving organ that is constantly adapting to the circumstances and environment around us. So Janice, first of all, you saw how excited I was to see you. It's been a while since I seen you.
Too
But
long.
I want to just say thank you for the great contributions you made to our dear profession for so many years.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about this. So I know that during the pandemic, health became a pretty much important issue out there for people.
Right.
But then at the same time, it brought in a question, and that is, sometimes it's difficult to talk about health because people have their own opinions, and we saw that related to the vaccine.
Right.
We didn't know, like we were tippy-toeing, do I say I'm going to do it, not do it? And what else are you doing in your life to keep your immune system going or to keep your body going? What is the best way that you think for us to communicate with our loved ones regarding their health and making sure that they realize that health must be a priority?
Yeah, I think it's really important for everyone listening to understand that, the best way I like to start is that how you live your life is through your brain and nervous system. This is why chiropractors are so focused on this, because everything that you taste, touch, think, smell, do, everything comes through your brain. And so what happens, though, is that we have a culture that has spent a lot of times telling us what to do with our health. The traditional system, it's all segmented into bits and parts, and when there's something wrong with your leg, everybody's focused on that versus what runs and controls all of the things that you're experiencing. So that really started me as a chiropractor. So my background is a chiropractor in practice with a very wellness-based practice. I worked with a lot of kids with very special needs, unique learning challenges. And so a lot of it for me was, how do you unlock the brain? And what I realized even myself in practice, I'm a certain personality style, and I was spending a lot of time telling someone about their health. And then I had to really pivot and say, if you come in to see me, wait a minute, this isn't about me anymore. This is about you. And how do we talk to your brain and your style? And so what's happened, I think COVID has just escalated this. We have all been being told what to do without a lot of rationale or without a lot of science behind this. And so I think the great news is all of you listening are realizing, wait a minute, how do I become my own advocate? Or how do I communicate what my needs are? And that gets a little difficult when you think about going into a doctor. And I always like to describe about personalities. I go back to, there's a whole bunch of personality profiles. And some of you listening may have done leadership profiles about how you communicate in your business, or there's things like the Enneagram. But I go a lot to what I call the 4 quadrants. And I learned it luckily young in my career, which allowed me to make all the communication about the patient. So I could pivot from telling them to say who's in front of me and how do I engage them. So how do I engage your brain? And so the best way I can describe it to everybody listening is there's basically 4 quadrants. So if you take a simple piece of paper and you split it into 4, there's a quadrant called the driver. Driver personality, we're very open with our communication, we're going to tell people what we want. We go into a medical clinic and what we're doing is saying, no, I know you're asking this, but here's what I'm here for. There's another quadrant that is the expressives, and they're going to be much more open, and there are a lot of the people that are asking, wait a minute, how do I live a better quality of life? The same thing, they're going to be very communicative, say, with your doctor. It's going to be easier to talk to your doctor. But then what happens is on the other side of this little matrix, there's 2 other styles that are much more closed with their communication. So that's the amiables, which luckily is about 40% of you in the population, meaning you're the really nice people, But then the challenge as you go to your doctor is you're almost too nice to ask really direct questions of your doctor. Or to say to the doctor, no, wait a minute, here's what I'm here for. And so that starts to set up a little bit of a challenge for the amiables. The other less open style is the analyticals. Now, the analyticals, you want to know a lot of the data, the information. That's probably what's been the most difficult for a lot of those people in the public during COVID, where you were trying to ask questions and nobody's really answering any of that. So that's my love, is I almost view, if I work on a patient, I'm not in practice anymore, but if I work on a patient or I check a child, I actually stop myself from seeing them as a physical body, and I think about them as a brain and neurology and nervous system. And how do I talk to them? Because that way we get into a relationship or a dialogue.
It's interesting because to me, a lot of times our challenge is communicating effectively our value. Mm-hmm. And what you bring to the table is that understanding the profile of the person in front of you. And I don't mean just for your patients, because you can apply those same things at home with your partners and your kids and your family. But if you can understand those quadrants and you can actually see what kind of person you're talking to,
right,
then all of a sudden now you may have a better opportunity to communicate your value effectively instead of talking above them or not approaching them in a way that they're going to engage you.
That's spot on, because that's what got lost during the pandemic, is that we're supposed to be able to have
communicated the same way.
We're supposed to have dialogue. Health and the scientific experience is asking questions, and suddenly we were all being told we couldn't ask questions.
I know.
And I'm a scientist. My background before chiropractic is I'm a microbiologist. I understand virology. I understand viruses. And so some of it just didn't actually make sense to me. But then nobody wanted to talk about it. So you're right that it's allowing a dialogue. Health is supposed to be a dialogue together versus somebody dictating to you.
Now, the benefit of this is whether a doctor that you're watching right now, remember, you need to be able to be more effective in the way you're communicating to your patients. But you bring a very good point. We have a lot of patients that are watching this.
Right.
And we want you to know that it's important for you to also express what it is that you need to know in order to make better choices in your health. Because I went through the same thing. They were giving us scripts in the news as to what we needed to say and stay within that script.
Right.
I've never seen that in my 35 years of doing television.
Right.
I have never seen such scripted. But let's talk a little bit about this brain. I know that a lot of us that are watching, we become chiropractors and we consider ourselves nervous system experts, right? But then when you go out there into the public, most people don't know what a nervous system is.
Right.
But then you say the brain, and they're like, oh, the brain. But then, more and more information has come about the brain. But in your opinion, what is one thing you discover in your journey, your evolution in understanding of this brain function that you feel chiropractors still may not be tapping into?
Yeah, this is a really key point, is that because we want to learn to talk to anyone's brain or have our brain engaged, it's like, what are the ways to do that? And so instead of talking about brain-based or the pain actually comes from your brain, like, I'd love our profession to really pivot that what people are looking for is, how does the brain actually interpret the world? And so what happens a lot is, the best way to stop and think about it is, the way our brain works is our amygdala, so a part of the brain that the doctors listening will know, is basically like the traffic cop. And the traffic cop takes anything we hear, we fear, the overwhelm in our lives, and it just stops every thought, idea, and pivots it right back to the hindbrain. So we are probably reacting. 80% of your brain is reactive. So we are reacting to something that was said when we were little, or our past experience, or the patient that was 5 people before the person in front of us. And so what's happening is, we're in this like overreactive kind of a fight or flight. Even though we think we're really relaxed and engaged, our brain is pivoting to the hindbrain. So the key is, you want to start to think about what unlocks and has things go to the upper forebrain. The forebrain is where we make all of our logical decisions for ourselves, but every one of you as a patient listening, that's what a chiropractor or a doctor needs to talk to, is, how do we talk to the rest of your brain? And the number one way to do that is surprise and delight. Why do you think when we take a young athlete, so my husband's a chiropractor, and we have a very brain-centric practice for him now. And he's doing a lot of this really engaged training with athletes looking for increasing their performance. It's a game. They are so engaged, then you can see the neuroplasticity happening. And it's amazing to watch. And when I go in and I do my sessions, like, my brain lights up. And it gets me away from that fear, overwhelm, money issues, practice concerns, family issues. And I had to learn this with my kids. I have 3 sons, and every one of them is hardwired differently. Wow. Different personalities. I had to learn, because the driver in me was, here's what we're going to do. Right. And we're going to get in the car, and away we go. And I'd have one of my sons right there in the car with me, and one of my other sons is in a meltdown crying on the stairs. And I'm like, dude. And the issue is, he thought I was screaming at him, because I was so direct or driver-like. So really how the brain works is, light it up, have fun, engage the brain. And people walk out, and when you walk out for the public listening of an office where you've had your brain lit up, or you see what this can do, and you'll never forget that.
Well, I love the fact that you describe it, because many times I feel like in school, we haven't done a good enough job in really putting the brain front and center.
At all.
We talk about the nerve root encroachment, we talk about all of that, but as you know, we've evolved in the science so much more. Yep. But let's talk a little bit about something else that I'm a little bit concerned about, and that is, in the mental health world, they're talking about the mental health tsunami, all this depression, anxiety, right, suicides that are happening. Where do you see that as chiropractors, we can play a role in that space, especially leveraging our understanding, our impact on the nervous system and the brain through a chiropractic adjustment?
I believe chiropractors are the brain specialists to create pivots. An adjustment is like a lightning fast reset. It's a neurological reset. It's not about the joint. Norman Doidge, a psychologist, hundreds of articles, books, and he's talked about what happens is, already a stressed brain fatigue, concern, worry, life, COVID, this, that. You're in your hindbrain, your amygdala is the cop, and what starts to happen is you're not even hearing or aware of things. And then as you slow down, as a joint isn't moving, as you're not out walking or engaging in the community, as you don't have movement, your brain deteriorates even more. So chiropractors, from my perspective, need to be leading this. We need to be on the brain train. Instead, what's happening is there is a lot out there that's talking about regenerative medicine or the dementias, but what's happening is you even look at some of the books. There's a great book called Outlive, and it's an MD that is really talking about all facets of your health and how to live to 100 and be really vital. But what are they saying? Other than talking about the adjustment, they're actually talking about the things that we need to be talking about as chiropractors.
And I think that that is a missing opportunity, because we know that from the days of Didi Palmer, he also talked about the autosuggestion, which is part of the brain function. But now I see a lot of people really struggling with all their stressors. And how do we introduce our benefit in chiropractic, but also leveraging the science of the brain?
Right.
I mean, that's evolved so much. Look at the way we used to think about the brain 30 years ago, and now we look at it as a living organism. We realize that it's a constant adaptation to any environment, any stress, anything. And I think that it's an opportunity for people to really drive that. You talked a little bit about the cognitive declines, the dementias and Alzheimer's and all of that. How big of a challenge, or even the lack of sleep? A lot of people are really struggling. What are some of the suggestions of how can we play in those arenas that are so popular out there, instead of always being back and neck pain and low back pain, which is great because we're good at it, but it's still over 80% of our patient base.
Right, versus how you live your life is through your brain. And
you know
pivoting
what?
to
That's
that,
a great title for a book, by the way.
Absolutely.
Love it. Love that
and,
concept.
You know, one of the mantras I'm talking about here this afternoon at the conference is brain, not bone. As a profession, chiropractically, we have been so caught up. And believe me, I love different techniques. I've been adjusted by some of the world's best chiropractors. But like both of us, as we travel, Dr. Mancini and I have done mission trips together. And I am all about the power of the adjustment. But I think we spend so much time in our profession talking about the different silos or specialties, and we're missing the brain train. And so even talking brain, not bone, and maybe we even say it's not bone alone. Like, I honor the specialties, but any adjustment, I know I've had multiple styles of practitioners adjust me. All of them are the lightning fast reset of the brain. Neuroplasticity and the opportunity for that happens all day, every day. And what are you doing to wake your brain up? So just as an example, in the center, that my husband's very niche practice now, and very focused on concussion, prevention of concussions, what you call neuro, exercises, sports vision training. And what you watch, for example, they work with a hockey team, and the goalies before a game come in for an adjustment and to do the brain training.
Wow.
And they happen to be the top in the league, in the nation, and future NHL draft picks. And a lot of it is their performance. Their brains wake up, like it's neuroplasticity in action. And they're not saying, oh, it's just a brain game. It's, they come in, they want that full spectrum. They want to understand the adjustment wakes it up, but what else do I do? And it's not young athletes or a lot of us my age, it's all about the brain for me now. I have 2 parents with degenerative brain disorders. And I am not going to live that lack of quality of life. And so what am I doing all day, every day to train the brain? And I still come from the place, the number one thing is, as a chiropractor listening or as a patient listening, get adjusted. That opens that up in an instant.
Well, I remember having discussions with Dr. Parker about how he always saw that the adjustment was beneficial so it can impact the brain and the nervous
Yes.
system. In fact, he would tell us, introduce yourself as nerve doctors,
Yes.
not bone doctors.
Yes.
So you bring that point, I mean, this was 35 years ago that he was telling us that, and now you bring the point that now, more than ever, it's important to have that discussion because people see the bone as a very limiting factor.
Yes.
They see it as, I may or may not need it. They see the brain as an essential for living.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you start talking the brain language, now all of a sudden that expands the ability to impact your community
Yes.
and the type of patients that you bring into your practice, which I think will take this profession to a new level.
I think it's ripe right now for a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Now, the issue is it's happening with or without us as chiropractors. The public wants it. Everybody's looking at blue zones. I don't know if you've seen that. It's on Netflix. The name's escaping me right now. I think it's like Live to 100,
Yes.
and it's a little Netflix
Yeah.
series. And they are showing the different blue zones. And in Okinawa, Japan, one of the most powerful things in the whole little series for me was that a gentleman who's almost 100 is sitting on a wood floor, cross-legged, moving and doing all these things. Because remember, what Norman Deutsch talks about is lack of movement impacts your brain. And so these people that live to be 100, their brains, like they're active, they're doing things, so play a new instrument,
Yeah.
learn a new language, try something new, like research and
Right.
look for these things that you can do.
Well, you have to keep the brain active. And,
Right.
and I've had that discussion, and this may be a good discussion to have. So many people work really hard in their life, and they go so hard to the point of maybe one day retiring. And they look at retirement primarily from a financial perspective. And we also have data that supports that the majority of the people are not doing what they're passionate or that what they love to do. So I can understand that
Right.
you will grind and you will sacrifice to the payoff one day. But what is your understanding and your belief as to retirement? A lot of people, when they retired, as you know, they all of a sudden go so hard and then they stop. And that has a really major impact in
Right.
the way that we are. Many get sick, many die sooner than later, many get, not able to enjoy that retirement phase. How would you explain to somebody or how you should handle your brain activity during that phase of retirement?
I think it's more important then than even when we're in our career.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us also, our career, we have kind of closed down. So we're reading or doing things that are
We're
about
focused
the
on that
job.
particular topic, yeah.
That
task.
stream, that task, that thing we have to do, or how to juggle the kids. A lot of you as women listening, we are naturally more multitaskers. But again, remember, you have laid down, so the way your neurology works, your brain is made up of neurons and these pathways and these connections. So what happens though, those get really hardwired or embedded.
Yeah.
And what you need to realize is that nerves that fire together, wire together. And you have the opportunity to take them and do this.
Wow.
That's what neuroplasticity is. Teach it something new, challenge it in a different way, and everything wakes up. And it's even like if you have a degenerative brain condition or you've had an accident, what happens is you lose parts of those connections.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people say, well, now I'm kind of stuck there, whereas no, we're not, because new connections, it's called synaptogenesis. And synaptogenesis is the way that those interconnections happen. We can watch it. So this afternoon in the talk, I'm going to show a time lapse where we can take somebody and show the brain scan and the interconnections of the neurons. And then we can track them for 2 weeks of training and 2 months of brain training.
Wow.
And all the new connections that are happening, it's like the neurology
Right.
is spreading. The neurology is expanding. So retirement, I think, is our opportunity. Like, it's the physical
To
stuff.
engage at a whole different level.
Absolutely. We technically have more time.
Right.
So why are we not doing this?
Right. Instead of sitting around watching TV or
Yes.
something that is sedentary. But you mentioned something that I think a lot of our audience probably would like to learn your feedback, and that is women's health. From your perspective and your years of studying, how would you compare the brain of a male with the brain of a female, and how should a woman think about her health, and her brain, doing hormonal changes, or even potentially as they're moving forward in their menopause?
Right. That's a whole topic and segment unto its own. In 1 minute, women tend to be multitaskers. It's almost like you have so laid down those regular paths that if anything, we need to rewire them. But taking charge, there are so many natural alternatives to menopause. In Japan, they never used to even have the word menopause for years and decades because they never went through it.
Yeah.
Their diets were different. They did natural supplementation. This is the whole regenerative, therapy movement, is that there are so many bioidentical
Options,
hormone replacements. So, for any of you listening, just take charge of it.
Yeah.
Remember, we said your personalities. A driver or a more expressive person is likely going to ask more questions.
Right.
But if you're more amiable, if you're analytical, just start to actually research then, but empower yourself to ask for those resources.
And for those of you that are chiropractors, my suggestion will be expand your knowledge. Learn about the subject matters. Don't just stay with what the school gave you. For one of the things as president of Parker that I would tell all the students is when you graduate is when your real learning begins, because you're going to be applying that knowledge that you're learning, but what you're going to realize is that there's so much we couldn't give you because you would have been in school for the rest of your life. So I want to make sure that hopefully this segment and Dr. Janice allowed you to realize that there's so much more to us as chiropractors that we can be living. And more importantly, because the public out there is really struggling with issues that we should be the ones supporting those issues, because we know traditional healthcare will never think and do what we do in healthcare. So thank you so much for being with us. For those of you that are watching, I want to tell you that remember the top 2 donations are going to get this amazing backpack. I want you to get it, so please click on the link right here, and I'm begging you, give us a donation, whatever it is, whether it's $10, $300, $1,000. I just want to make sure that we're investing in chiropractic and allow the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress to actually put those dollars to work and be able to impact and educate millions of people as to the value of chiropractic. Now stay tuned, because we're going to take a little break, but we're going to come right back and we're going to bring to you the star of the show, Cracking Addicts, and that is Dr. Alexandra Colon. She's going to share with you a little bit about how that show came about, what the impact that it's having in society, and more importantly, how we need you to be able to get the value of chiropractic message out to millions of people. Stay tuned with us.